It was life. It wasn't knowledge. If you're communicating knowledge, you have to be very careful. You present it in such an attractive way and an impressive way and all that. But if you're communicating life, it's very different. I want to urge you, my dear brothers and sisters, long for life more than for knowledge. A lot of Christians have longed for knowledge, and it has not made any difference in their life or their family life or their walk with God. Long for life and say, Lord, anything that hinders your life in me, I want to get rid of. But if you want it, this is the price you have to pay. You can't hold anything back from God. You can't put anyone or anything as more important than God in your life. No loved one must be more important than God. No property must be more important than God. No possession on earth must be more important than God in your life. You're willing to give up every single thing. That's what God wanted to prove in Abraham's life. Abraham had already given up his relatives, and when he was 75, he left his country and came out. 50 years later, it says in Genesis 22, God tested him. Does God test a man 50 years after he's decided to follow him? Sure. God's testing me even today. He's always testing us. The reason is he wants to take us one class higher. In India, in the schools, at the end of every year, there's what's called a final examination. And the children are promoted to the next class only if they pass that. And if they don't pass that, they sit in the same class. So whenever God tests us, it's exciting. You know, parents in India will send their children to school for their final examination, even if they've got tummy upset, headache, fever, anything. No, you got to go to school, otherwise you'll sit in the same class next year. It doesn't matter how sick you are. Go and finish that examination. It's very, very important. So God tests us, and it's good because it's a promotion that we will get. And the test is, will I give up this? Will I give up the other thing? Will I depend on Him? So that was the secret of Jesus' life. He never withheld anything. Anything the Father, He said, sure. And when it came to that last day of His life, do you know why Jesus went to the cross? You know, we always say, Jesus, God so loved the world, that Jesus went to the cross. It was a proof of His love for me. But do you know that Jesus Himself, when He was going to the cross, just before He went to the cross, there were two things He said. Greater love has no man than this, than a man lay down his life for his friends. Yeah, He said that. That's in John 15. And He was saying that in verse 13. He was saying, I'm going to lay down my life for you. But before He said that, before He said He was going to lay down His life for His friends, He said, actually, I'm going to the cross because I love my Father. And my Father's told me to do it. See, John 14. Before He spoke about greater love has no man than this, in John 14 He said, verse 31, the last verse of John 14, so that the world may know that I love the Father, I do as the Father commanded me. Let's go from here. Where to? To the cross. So why did He go to the cross? Because He loved the Father. So when I see Him hanging on the cross, I say, wow, how He loved the Father. Most people, when they see the cross, they see, oh, how He loved me, how He loved the world. True. But before that, how He loved the Father. And that is what many people haven't seen. There are two arms in the cross, the vertical and the horizontal. And you know, in every cross, the vertical is always bigger than the horizontal one. Always. The vertical arm of the cross is always bigger. His love for His Father was greater than the horizontal love for us. I see two loves on the cross, vertical towards the Father, horizontal towards us. And you've got to understand His love for His Father, to understand His love for us. There was nothing that He would say no to His Father. Whatever His Father told Him to do, He would do. It must have been very difficult for Him as a little boy when His Father told Him, you got to submit to Joseph and Mary, even though they're imperfect. And they may tell you to do a lot of things which you see are not right or foolish. Don't parents do foolish things? Which parent is there who can say, I've never done a foolish thing in my life? I can't say that. I remember when someone asked me, Brother Zac, you brought up your children all to follow the Lord. Why don't you write a book about bringing up children? I said, if I do write a book, I said, the one reason I don't write a book is because I don't want to discourage people who are struggling with their children. Say, oh, I didn't do it perfectly. And no, there's hope for everybody. There's hope for everyone, even those who have made mistakes. And I don't want to discourage anyone. I said, if I ever write a book, it'll be The mistakes I made as a father, that'll be the title of the book. And how God overruled those mistakes and answered my prayer and brought up my children to follow the Lord, so that I'd give hope to everybody. Everything I say must give hope to people, never discourage anyone. So many testimonies that we hear discourage people. Oh boy, I can never be like that. I don't want to speak like that. I want to give hope. Jesus gave hope. He who was perfect spoke in a way that gave hope. So we need to understand, when Jesus went to Gethsemane, that was the first time that there was a hesitation to give what the Father wanted. Never in his life did he have a struggle to give whatever the Father asked. Father, all that I have is yours. Okay, here we come to Gethsemane. And the Father says, now you got to go to the cross. And he prays in Matthew 26, oh Father, verse 42, Matthew 26, 42, isn't there another way? Can't I avoid this cup? The first time in his life, he's hesitating to give something to the Father. How is that possible? He who said just a few minutes earlier, John 17 actually comes just before Matthew 26. You know, it was the Last Supper. At the end of the Last Supper, he's praying to the Father in John 17, Father, all that I have is yours. All that you have is mine. And an hour later, he's in Gethsemane saying, oh Father, do you really want this? Can't I avoid this? And he prayed, verse 44, a third time. And for 1 hour, it went on. His prayer went on. Verse 39, Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. And he tells Peter, verse 40, you could not pray with me for 1 hour? That's how we know he was praying for 1 hour in Gethsemane. What was he praying for 1 hour? Oh Father, can you take away this cup? Can you take away this cup? Never in his life did he pray like that. Every time in his life, if Father said, yes, here it is, Lord, Father. You want this? Here it is. Don't go there? Okay, Father, I won't go there. Go here, I'll go there. Every single moment, submit to your imperfect Joseph and Mary at home. Sure. You got 4 younger brothers and 2 sisters there in the home. They ill-treat you, forgive them, never get irritated with them, bear with them. Sure. Never once did he sin. Never once did he get upset with his younger brothers or sisters or his earthly parents or anyone. No matter what people called him the devil, he said, Father said, forgive them. He's forgiven. Never, 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 even for a single moment, did he hesitate to offer anything the Father asked him to offer, even if it meant pain, suffering, ridicule, rejection. Even later on when they slapped him and all that, he said yes. But in Gethsemane, there was this struggle for 1 hour. And when you read something like that, you got to stop and think, what is it that Jesus, who so readily gave everything, was hesitant to give? And when you understand, I'll tell you, I didn't understand it for nearly 20 years of my Christian life after I was born again. But when I understood it, it changed my life. See, that Jesus was not afraid of the physical suffering. Ridicule, mocking, stripping, beating, whipped with those iron pieces on a lash. He'd willing all for that, crucified. He'd go through 1,000 crucifixions for me. That's how much he loved you and me. The only thing he hesitated from was, he knew that if he had to take the price, pay the punishment for our sin, for the sin of humanity, it meant eternal separation from his Father. What is the punishment for your sin? Every Christian knows the punishment for sin is not physical death. How many of you believe the punishment for sin is physical death? Think of it logically. If the punishment for man's sin is physical death, then every man, when he dies, he's paid the punishment. Everybody should go to heaven, right? But you know very well that the punishment for sin is eternal separation from God in hell. Now the next question is, did Jesus take the punishment for your sin or not? If he died only physically, I'm sorry, he didn't take the punishment for my sin, because that is not the punishment for sin. If he did not take eternal separation from the Father on the cross, he has not taken the punishment for my sin. I'm still in my sin. However much any pastor or preacher tells me my sins are forgiven, they are not forgiven. Because the punishment for my sin was not taken. My debt was not paid. I'm still owing the Father for my sins. And so when Jesus went, as he came near, he knew all along that it would be, but as you come near to the event, it becomes more real. And he knew in a few hours he'd face it. And we know that when he hung on the cross, he was crucified at 9 o'clock in the morning, on a Thursday, by the way, not Friday. I'll tell you why it's not Friday, because it says he was 3 days and 3 nights in the grave. And a simple calculation from Friday to Sunday is not 3 days and 3 nights. I know the Roman Catholic Church taught Good Friday, but it's not true. It's one of the other things that they taught that were wrong. Anyway, that's besides the point. But he knew when he was crucified on Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, up to 12 o'clock, he was saying things like getting that thief to be saved. By the way, that's why he didn't drink that anesthetic thing to ease his pain. They offered him some type of drink they'd relieve the pain. It was an act of mercy to all who were crucified. Do you know why he didn't drink it? I don't know whether you noticed it. I don't have time to show you these verses. But when they offered it to him at the beginning, he did not take it. But towards the end, after the 6 hours crucifixion was over, at the end he took it. Why didn't he take it at the beginning? To relieve that pain, which they offered it to the thieves and they took it. It was an anesthetic to relieve the pain of being crucified, and he wouldn't take it. But at the end of 6 hours when they offered him, he took it. The reason was he didn't want, it was like a drug that would make you sort of, you wouldn't be very coherent and you wouldn't be alert. But he wanted to be alert because he had to take one person to paradise. He had to be alert so that, he was so sensitive to the Father, and then the Father said, no, don't drink it now. Because, Jesus didn't know then, but there was this thief who needed to be saved. He was willing to keep away, to suffer pain, if it meant being alert, to save one's soul. There's so many things I learn when I see Jesus hanging on the cross, in a simple thing like why he didn't take that anesthetic drink. I say, Lord, I want to be like that. I want to be alert. I want to be alert. If you tell me to keep awake sometime, to be alert, to help someone, sure. If you tell me to stay away from having a meal, for example, because I have to help somebody to spend hours with that person, so I'm sure I'm willing to skip a meal. What's that compared to bringing a soul to God's kingdom? That's how Jesus was. And then he had to arrange for he was the eldest son in the family, and he had to make sure his mother was provided for. His brothers were unconverted, so he handed over his mother to John rather than to his younger 4 brothers. A lot of things like that. And he also had to, very importantly, he had to forgive those people who killed him. Father, forgive them. All that he had to do in those 3 hours. And then it was over. And then the next 3 hours, he was forsaken by the Father. That's when he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? For the first time in his life, he called his Father God. He never called him God in his entire life. He always called him Father, 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 Father. Then suddenly, 3 hours before he finally died, he was standing now not before his Father. He was hanging there before the Judge of the universe.